A lot of times when I ask that question, many people say, yeah, actually, I've never really been a donor or a non-donor going through the donation page. And so that's a little bit of what we're going to do today is sort of taking off the hat of the employee and the person who is trying to push revenue, but rather what is the actual experience for those donors and how can we make it a little bit better? So let's rethink the donation. The gift isn't just a transaction. Of course, that's really what it boils down to. But what goes into that transaction are those 5 decisions that Brian teased at the front. So from the moment a donor lands on your page to the moment they leave the confirmation, they're making a sequence of really small behavioral decisions. Each one has its own psychology. So we're all going to go back to college a little bit and think through the psychology of each of these. Each one has its own potential failure moments, which we're going to try and step away from. And your form is helping each one or hurting each one. And so we're going to try and figure out how we ensure that those 5 steps are as streamlined as possible. So what are those 5 steps or 5 moments? The first one here is arrival. The moment that your donor lands on your page. They've clicked from somewhere, right? Probably an email, an ad, a search result, though I know search is a hot topic right now with AI. And the first 3 seconds are basically a sanity check. Did I land in the right place, right? Think about any time that you donated or even any time that you've bought a pair of shoes online. You click something, you get there, and you're going, okay, was I supposed to be here? Yes or no kind of moment. Is it still about the thing that I cared about when I clicked? Many forms answer that question badly and sometimes not at all. The next item is the amount, the moment they have to commit to a number. This is the single most expensive moment in the entire flow, in my opinion. The donor went from feeling something to actually crunching numbers and doing math, even if it is a split-second math calculation. So your suggested ask array is doing more work than almost anything else on the page. It's going to move somebody up or down in their donation amount. The third item here is a recurring ask. I know we talked about that a little bit earlier today, but the moment that you ask them to upgrade from a one-time gift into an ongoing commitment, really to say, I want to be a part of this every single month. This is the moment that most of us get wrong as a sector. I know, we talked about this earlier today, but we optimize often for opt-in rate and ignore the retention. We ignore the ability to say we want somebody who's going to come on and give monthly and give frequently, and not just somebody who's going to give a one-time gift. That person who's going to retain is going to be more valuable than your one-time donor who's going to give $10. Then, of course, we have the submit, the moment they have to execute the gift, when they actually say, yes, charge my credit card, essentially. In that moment, the decision is made. They want to give, and now every required field, every missing payment option, every form quirk is friction at the worst possible moment. And this is where wallet pay lives, where field reduction lives, where you can actually add the right kind of friction to large gift size. And then, of course, the confirmation. I think this is a moment where people oftentimes say, okay, they've already donated. We're good to go. Just send them the email and everything is fine. And actually, the confirmation page or email or letter is a really great moment to drive that retention. It's a good moment to get a second gift. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too and figure out what are you all doing in that moment and how can we make it that much stronger. So let's jump into the first moment, which, like I said, is arrival. So before we get into a few examples, I'd love to hear from you all. What are the sources that are sending the highest amounts of traffic to your donation pages right now? Sometimes I hear like SMS, email, direct mail. What is the biggest channel driving to your page? Email? I'm seeing a lot of nodding over there for email. Yep. Perfect. And email being the largest of all of those? Okay. Yeah. Does anybody else have any other answers that are different, or is that mostly what everybody is seeing? Going to assume that that is what everybody is seeing. I know I know that direct mail sometimes sends individuals too, so we can talk a little bit about that. But yes, oftentimes I am seeing the same thing across my clients. And I'm also seeing SMS pop a little bit more too, especially in big moments, whether it be a newsworthy moment, whether it be a rapid response moment. SMS is something that is short in copy and text and design, and so less approvals if we're being honest, but also is fast to get out the door. And so that can tend to drive more traffic in those key moments, which also happens to be some of the biggest fundraising moments too. So certainly important to think about that as well. So before we talk about what happens on the donation page, I want to start one click earlier to your point of where they're coming from, with where the donor is when they first see you. So on the left here, we have an SMS, like I just teased. This is a text message from Make-A-Wish. So a donor, let's just say, is on their couch, on their phone, and a thread opens up from a number they recognize. There's a kid, a puppy, a story about Johnny who has leukemia, and a 3x smash. Those are all the formulas that go into, or all the pieces that go into a great formula to drive revenue. The donor is in a private, intimate space. They're on their phone. They're, like I said, they're at home. They're on the couch. Maybe they're watching TV. They're reading something. It's short. It's right to the point. It feels personal. And also, dogs and kids. Let's be serious. We know that drives revenue. And that tends to work. So that goes from on their phone, intimate space, right to a donation page. Another example here is in the center, and this is paid social, which I know that you had talked about a little bit too. And this is an Operation Smile ad on Facebook. So here, let's assume the donor is scrolling. Maybe they're half checked out. Maybe they're half paying attention. They're between perhaps a meme from a friend and a recipe video, but their attention is captured because there's a smiling kid. World Smile Day, again, a 3x match, a donation button, or donate now button rather. And then the donor is in public, a distracted space. They're reading something somewhere, but have to fight for those attention moments, right? So we're still really leaning into, again, great imagery, a great call to action, the match, all the things that we know work. And then on the right, going back to Make-A-Wish, we have an email. So the donor opened their inbox, obviously on purpose. They probably have a million emails, as I'm sure we all can relate to. They're sifting through, and yet they chose to click on this email. So they made that first moment of, yes, I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of this 5-step journey. They clicked on the email, and they're going to land then in the same place that the donor from the SMS and from the ad is going to land. They all kind of converge into one stream, and that goes right to the donation page. The problem, though, is that when you think about the donation form in isolation, you assume the donor is showing up motivated, focused, and ready. But the donor on SMS is a totally different headspace that we just talked about than the donor coming from Facebook ad where you're competing with them and other ads. And that is totally different from somebody who's coming from their inbox where they have a million other emails. So we're trying to think through, how do we have a form that has no idea where somebody is coming from, where they might be in their own world, and having one form to pull all of that together and push people through these 5 steps to get a large amount at the end of the day. So when we talk about the moment of arrival, we're not just talking about the page load time. We're not talking about the moment that they hit your donation form. We're really talking about whether your form is meeting the donor where they actually are. And what depends on where they are leads into those 5 steps. So a quick show of hands. I know we talked about this a little bit, but like I said, we can see that people are coming from email. Email, again, is the biggest driver. Show of hands. So you get thumbs up. Yes, we love that. Okay. So we're going to really then focus on that piece and move forward in the different 5 steps. Oh, do you need to go back a second? Okay. Oh, I saw your phone up taking a photo, so I wasn't sure if you were trying to get his screen. Okay. Okay, so back to arrival. We're going to talk a little bit about the donor just clicked. They're motivated, but a little fragile. The first 3 seconds, like I said, are largely out of the form's control. You have page weight, you have load time, image render, fonts, third-party scripts, all sorts of fun stuff in the code that goes into your donation page. But within those 3 seconds, the donor is doing that sanity check of, did I land in the right place? So what's going to work? We have visual continuity from the email, again, just pulling back from that example, through to the page. Same hero image, same campaign language, same visuals, colors, etc. We have one sentence of mission language above the form in this example, which is charity water. I know we used this example, I think, in another conversation earlier. Obviously, charity water is always a fun go-to, but you can see here that they're really trying to pull in that headline, that mission is at the top. There is no misunderstanding of what is happening on this donation page and what the organization does. It's not a paragraph, it is quick to the point. We have a hero image that matches the appeal, not a stock or generic photo. And then mobile load time is actually under 2 seconds, which is a goal, not a floor. You really want it to be as low as possible, of course. So Who here is sending email-driven traffic to a donation page that doesn't visibly match the email creative? I'm seeing some nods no and some nods yes. I think oftentimes people have to make one of two decisions, right? They're saying, okay, do I send out an email campaign and have a donation page that is custom for every single one, which is a huge lift. It's a lot of time that organizations have to spend. Or I have to say, this is my default generic donation page. I'm going to use this across the board. And there is nothing wrong with that. Both decisions and both answers are right, and they're wrong in different moments. But I think a lot of times we need to think about how do we make sure the donation page is generic enough while still being specific to make sure that no matter what email, no matter what SMS, no matter what direct mail piece you're coming from, it still works. So I'm going to encourage you all to pull up your donation page on your phone right now. So pull your phones out. And you can be on cellular, you can be on the Wi-Fi. I know Brian sent around the Wi-Fi instructions at the start. And pull up your donation page. Tell me how long it takes. Is it those 2 seconds? When we talked about the last donation page and we talked a little bit about the load time, the images, everything, pulling that down. How long does it take for your donation page to pop up? Is it under 2 seconds? Raise your hand if it's under 2 seconds. Raise your hand if it's over 2 seconds. Yes, once we get past the Wi-Fi prompt, of course. That doesn't necessarily count towards this. For those of us that are over 2 seconds, are there things that you're now looking at your donation page and saying, oh, maybe there's a change that I could make here? I'm going to ask the table in the front. I saw some nods there about it being over 2 seconds. Are there any quick changes that you see that you could make that would allow for it to perhaps be less than 2 seconds?
Well, to get to it, like if you go to the home page,
Mhm.
you then have to click the drop out to go to the donate page. Like we don't have the pop up or even a donate button, like right.
Yeah, so this is not your homepage flow, essentially. Like you don't get to the homepage and there's immediately. Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
I haven't done this on our page in a little while.
Uh-huh.
But at least
That's why we're here to do it.
sure, why not?
Yeah.
At least on Global, it loads the home page and then 2 to 5 seconds later, it's like,
Make a donation. And then it's like,
Yeah. And sometimes that's purposeful, right? Sometimes we want people to get to the donation to the homepage, learn a little bit about you, even if it is only 2 to 5 seconds, and then be hit with the ask. Sometimes that's not purposeful, and that is just a load problem, but it probably is purposeful in that instance. And I think that sounds like a great strategy. Something that we can always test, right? Perfect. Okay, so then we're going to talk through, now that we've talked a little bit about the arrival, we're going to talk about moment 2, and that is the amount. So the donor obviously has to commit to a number, and this is the most cognitively expensive moment in the entire flow. So we have 2 real examples here on the screen, and we're going to look at what each one is doing. On the left, we have Feeding America, and of course, I had to pick them. They always have a great call out. I think at every conference, people are always like, oh my gosh, I love Feeding America. I don't know if anybody is from Feeding America or one of their chapters, but I feel people always call that out, Charity Water and a handful of others. So I wanted to pull them up here. But they're not leading with an amount array at all. They're leading with impact. So they say $1 equals 20 meals. And that single sentence is doing more work than any suggested amount could. Before the donor even picks a number, they've already been told what their dollar is buying. Now, when they see a giving field, they're not asking, how much should I give? They're asking, how many meals should I provide? How many meals can I provide? And that is a completely different cognitive task that we're putting people through, and a much easier one. That doesn't mean that everybody should change their donation page to that, right? Now, looking at the right is the USO, and that is a very different approach. And I will tell you that both of these organizations tested into these approaches. So there is not a one size fits all. It's just making sure that you're doing what is right for your organization. They've laid out on the right for the USO an explicit array. So they have $1,000, $500, $250, $100, $50, and $35. 6 options, default at 45 and a custom field. and a monthly toggle at the top. It's clean, it's clear, it's scannable. And I think what really stands out to me is that they're not even pushing you towards one of the buttons. They're pushing you towards a number that is outside of that string. Again, test it into. So like I said, none of these are right. None of these are wrong. It is what's best for your audience and for your donation pages. But if your ask array is too big, donors freeze. If it's too low, they might anchor down. They might say, okay, yeah, I'll give $10, when really they could have given $100. And so we really want to make sure that we're putting the right ask array in front of the right individual. So what works? We have a segment by acquisition source, so we can figure out email acquired donors and paid social donors and direct mail responders. They all have very different giving curves. So one ask array might be different for that audience than it is for somebody who is new and organically coming to your website. You can have 4 options that can outperform 6 perhaps, or maybe 7 outperform 4. All things to test. Oftentimes, more choices means lower completion, but USO 6 works because the spread is so wide that it serves as a menu, not a clear decision path. And again, test it into. So these are all things that you can, and that encourage you to test. Anchor with impact. Like Feeding America did, you have the $75 funds X. So donors give to outcomes, not to your operating budget. And then, of course, default selection at the second highest tier. This is the lever that almost nobody uses, and it lifts average gift more than any single thing might happen. And you see this a little bit in the USO one, right? We have the 6 options. We're actually suggesting that somebody give outside of those options. So making sure that your ask and what you're trying to push somebody to is not the lowest, obviously not the highest. I tend to see that when people test it, it's like the second to lowest is where you really want to push people. But again, test everything. So a quick poll, when you think about your donation form, how many of you suggested amounts of $25, $50, $100, $250, $500, which is sort of your like go-to out-of-the-box option? I'm seeing some nodding. So this is another great area where I would say, let's test it. Let's find ways to figure out if these are the right asks, if they're in the right order. I've also seen people test from low to high, high to low, from testing 3 buttons that just talk about impact as opposed to amounts. All things that, again, are very bespoke and different for every organization, but that I encourage you to think on because it will drive your donation and your average gift up. Okay, we're jumping back to Make-A-Wish for a quick second. So this is a donation page, obviously, for Make-A-Wish. If you look at the ask array on the right, it is $750, $500, $350, $140, $85, and $25. And then again, sort of similar to the USO, the custom field is $125. So if you notice what's happening here, these aren't your typical round numbers in tiny increments. There is no 50, 100, 250 pattern. The array is doing something that's really different. And again, as I keep saying, very much tested into. It's reading signals about who the donor is, and I will put that out there. The donor is me. This is what I see when I get to the donation page, where they come from, and what donors who look like them have given before. So this is really leaning into an AI-driven ask array. So this is no longer your out-of-the-box, hey, we're going to have everybody always see 25, 50, 100. This is now saying, I'm going to trust AI to figure out exactly what they should be seeing. And that's what I then see here. And I will put it out there that Make-A-Wish is a client of mine, so I have given a fair amount to them. But it does mean that I'm then seeing a totally different amount. I'm seeing an amount that includes, I think it's the 140, which typically nobody has on their donation page. And it's really trying to figure out what me as a donor gives. What does Make-A-Wish often see when somebody is coming from perhaps an email? What do they give? And how can we put that in front of them? So I really suggest that you try to use this as an option. You can test the out-of-the-box ideas, right? The 25, 50, 100. You can test going from highest to lowest, lowest to highest. You can test all of these human-created ideas. And then you can also test that against AI. And I think if you can, those that are controlling the screen, if you can scroll to the top, the AI one, when we tested this for Make-A-Wish, actually drove an increase of revenue of, I think it was 25 or 30%. It was a 32% lift in revenue. So when they went from, hey, let's have maybe a certain donation page and an ask string for email, maybe a different one for SMS, maybe a different one for direct mail, to let's actually have AI control this and figure out what is best, they increased revenue by 32%. And the best part about that is they needed fewer donation pages, a lighter lift from their team, a lighter lift from their agency, and more revenue. A win-win for everybody. Is anybody here using an AI-driven ask string? Or can I ask what organizations you're with? Okay. And I saw some hands in the back there. Oh, nice. Okay. And are you with the chapters or the? Okay. Very nice. And who makes your donation pages? So if using the AI one, do you get to make fewer donation pages? Is that what you're seeing as part of that? Uh-huh.
To the Berlin, we can measure like the left and right US. We like kind of recently ripped those buttons on.
Okay.
So we're not sure.
Okay. Very nice. But presumably down the road, if this works, it will be less of a lift for you all, freeing up your time. Seeing a lot of head nodding behind you. And do you all make your own donation pages? Right.
Auxiliary association, so all donors suffer not only my pocket, but the heart.
Mm-hmm.
So be it that's a geek that was so pay at baseline for
Nice. Very nice. Is there anybody here who has the functionality to implement any kind of AI ask string that you could potentially test before year end, which I cannot believe is like 4 months away, that hasn't tested it yet? So does that mean that everybody who has the ability to use AI ask strings is using it, and we need to get more people the ability to use it? Is that what I'm hearing? I'm hearing some I don't know. Okay, and that's totally fair. What platform are your donation pages on? Okay, we can look that up later. Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. So if your donation page is on certain platforms, some of them have it built in. So some of them you can say, I'm perhaps simplifying. You can say, hey, I want AI to drive the ask string. Some of them don't even have that ask. Some of them don't have that ability. And so if you don't have that ability, then that's not something that you can implement or test, right? And then if that's not the case, then we should talk about what donation platform you're using and which ones you can use so that you can be even smarter and drive more revenue. But yeah, some of them have that ability. And so it's not you saying, hey, how do I write AI into this? But it's rather you saying, hey, platform, use AI, if that is a perhaps oversimplified way of saying that. Yeah, so then to get to your question earlier that you asked in the back, I didn't capture your name, but it isn't something that you then have to write in. It really is just a toggle for you all. And I think, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Make-A-Wish, I'm pretty sure they use Fundraise Up. And so that's,
all of their chapters are you like I was just trying to pull up.
yeah, they all use it, I
Some
think.
chapters have it
Turned off. Some of it have it like KB testing right now.
Mhm.
There's a lot of methods you can use.
Yeah.
See it works or not.
We love that. Yeah, and like I said, for Make-A-Wish, they ran it. They drove an increase of 32% by using it. And so as we're all thinking about year end right around the corner, certainly I understand that some people don't have that toggle, which is obviously very easy to use. But if you do have that toggle, if you do have the ability to test it, whether it be with Fundraise Up or anybody else, wherever your donation pages are, I cannot recommend it enough, because who doesn't want a 32% increase in revenue this year end by just hitting a button? Okay, moment 3, which is the recurring ask. This is where the moment we, I think, as a sector, most often get it wrong, or I should say, can do so much more. So if you frame the ask, the recurring ask, wrong, you can lose the gift entirely, or you can win a recurring that you'll lose in 60 days, right? There are so many different outputs here, and we really want to make sure that we're getting it right the first go. So the metric that matters is recurring donors retained at 90 days, not the opt-in rate. We want to figure out who became a recurring donor and who in 90 days is still that recurring donor, in which case it has paid off. So when you're thinking about a mission anchored prompt, maybe it's become a saner. If you're thinking about a post-gift prompt, you can outperform pre-checked recurring. If you're thinking about frequency defaults, matching to a donor profile, using the AI string, and of course, avoiding pre-checking recurring in the first-time donor. So if somebody's coming to your page and giving for the first time, maybe don't have, and again, test all of this, but maybe don't have the, yes, I want to become a recurring donor box checked, because that oftentimes is what drives somebody to say, wait, hold on, I actually didn't mean to click that. Can I please stop? So it's how do we make sure that people see the right ask at the right time, which again is like an ongoing theme. So who here pre-checks the recurring box on their donation form? Just a show of hands. Okay. Which is a great answer. Uh-huh. Yep. Yes. And we love that. And I was actually going to get to that in a second, which is some people don't have it as a prompt, but some people even have it on the confirmation page or even a confirmation email. Does anybody have that embedded into their practice or into their strategy? Seeing some nodding, some not. We can talk about that. So let's first look at a donation page here. Again, Make-A-Wish. The headline here is only 1 in 3 wishes are granted. Of course, that's going to capture anybody's attention. Help us get to 3 in 3. Again, we're really trying to capture the attention. We're trying to make sure that when somebody says that I land in the right page or the right place, that we are saying, yes, this is where you want to be if you want to make an impact. So we're not asking for money in that moment. We're stating a problem and inviting the donor to be a part of the solution. The math is implicit. If only 1 in 3 wishes is granted today, then becoming a recurring donor is how you change that ratio. So the recurring ask is already baked into the headline without being too forward and before the donor even sees the form, right? So you're sort of saying, here's what I'm going to need from you today. It's going to be money and on an ongoing basis before you even put it out there. The creative is also doing some of this. So granting 3x the wishes is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 3 kids, 3x match, a 3-day window. Everything on this page is reinforcing the same idea. There's a multiplier on your gift if you act now. The action that they want you to take is monthly, not one time, and it is easy as can be. The form itself is on the right side. And so if you look at the form, the monthly tab here is pre-selected and highlighted with that little heart. The button at the bottom says donate monthly, not donate now. So we're sort of not even encouraging anybody who hits this donation page to give a one-time gift. We're just saying, this is the experience that you're going for. We're asking you to give a monthly gift. And of course, we're reinforcing the impact. So below the amount, we say $45 impact with 3x a match. That is really throughout. So a $15 monthly gift becomes a $45 impact. Again, really trying to encourage that 3, 3, 3 throughout. And then, of course, we want to bring it all together. So compare this to what most of us do. We collect a one-time gift. Then somewhere near the submit button, we would ask, oh, would you also want this to become a monthly gift? That ask is divorced from the mission. It's a logistical question, not an emotional one. So Make-A-Wish instead is saying, I'm not going to ask for a one-time gift. I'm just going to ask for a recurring gift. I'm going to make the entire flow, the entire experience, steps 1 through 3 that we've discussed, all about a recurring gift. And they built the entire page around that. And when the prompt is mission anchored, you don't just lift opt-in rate, you lift the kind of donor you acquire. And we're all, I think, talking about personas and who the right individuals are. We're able to capture that and sort of filter out the wrong people by really trying to create this strategy and approach and a journey from the beginning. The trade-off, though, is that there's a real tension here. Defaulting to monthly will lose you some one-time gifts. Donors who would have given maybe that $50 or $25 or even $10 gift as a one-time gift might back out when they see a monthly default. So the math has to work for your organization, right? If you're thinking about what you're paying to get somebody to your page, maybe it's worth it to let go of the $10 donor and say, okay, I'm not going to pay for that. I'd rather pay for more people who are going to become a recurring donor. This is, again, going back to we need to test everything. We need to make sure that we're doing the right thing for our organization, for our source of traffic, all of that. But this is a decision that they have made, which is I'm okay letting go of the $10 donation. I really am going to focus on just creating a completely bespoke experience for a monthly donor. So, quick show of hands, whose donation page that is here defaults to one time? Quick show of hands, whose defaults entirely to monthly and there is no reference of one time? Nobody. So, ahead of year end, perhaps test that, perhaps dig into that. Does that make sense? Does it maybe make sense only for people coming from SMS? Does it only make sense for people that are coming from an email if they've opened an email 3 times? Whatever it is, I think it's worth exploring and thinking through and figuring out what is the cost for a donation and does it make sense to have them always be a recurring donor? It might not make sense, but I think it's worth thinking through. Okay, so moment 4, the submit. So the donor has decided, now they have to actually click execute. So at this point, the decision is mostly, I would say, made. The donor wants to give, now they have to execute the gift. And every required field, every missing payment option, every form quirk is friction at the worst possible moment. Because the donor is no longer thinking about your mission, they're thinking about whether they can find their wallet. They're thinking about how quickly can they go from, yes, I've decided I want to give $100 to this organization to, I have something else on my to-do list that I have to get to. And every field that you're asking for from that moment of, yes, I want to give, to I have to get to the next thing on my to-do list is a moment where somebody has a chance to back out and say, no, thank you, I have to move on with my day. So on the left here, you see an example, which is a Charles Darwin Foundation. Beautiful imagery. And look at what this form is doing well, and look at what it's quietly doing that maybe is a little bit harder to spot. So in my opinion, what is working really well is the give once versus monthly toggle is clean and prominent at the top. They have tested into this. They know that having that toggle there and visible works well for them. They have 6 tier options. They are well spread from $5, which again, in my experience is a little bit low, but they've tested into it, to $1,000. Custom amount is 20 as a default, and they're serving a global audience. They know that. That is not the case for everybody. So they also have the USD option here too. They also have dedicate this donation checkbox, which is optional, not required. But for them, a lot of people come to their donation page. They oftentimes will dedicate a donation, and so they want to make sure that that is upfront, is something that people can see and do if they opt to, but also is not something that is mandatory. It's not going to remove people from the process. And then down at the bottom, they have add comment, another optional layer of friction. And again, sometimes friction is good, right? We're all okay with friction if it means that we're getting to the right place. So another optional layer of friction that lets the donor decide to add meaning if they want to. Is that something that everybody should integrate? Absolutely not. Is it something that some people should test? Absolutely. So it is, again, just what works best for you all, but just trying to present a handful of options of how you can make sure the experience is best for you and for your donors. What's not on the screen but should be is I'd want to see wallet pay buttons above the form, not below. Apple Pay, Google Pay, PayPal is the first option, not the third. Most mobile donors will pick one of those if it's offered and this person is coming in from a mobile device. And if not, they'll dig out a credit card or they're going to bail. So again, you're trying to make sure it is as easy as possible. Everybody uses Apple Pay these days. So the faster you can say, oop, Apple Pay, everything is saved, move forward, the better. In fact, I think sometimes Apple Pay makes it too easy to buy everything, but that's a whole other conversation. We also have a point to the global payments visual. So if you look at the right side, this is the other half of the submit. Donors don't pay all the same way. Again, this is really bespoke to this organization. It is really specific to this organization, is really helpful for this organization. Am I suggesting that everybody offer USD and other forms of currency? No, please don't use that as your takeaway. But for this organization, it was really, really important that they have all of that outlined. So in looking at this, I think there's a handful of things that people can take and implement into their own UX. But again, it really comes down to test everything, figure out what is important. Do you need to have a comments box? Some people do. Do you need to have a dedication box? Some organizations do. Do you need to have a, I want this money to go to X, Y, and Z program? Some people do. Figure out what are your must-haves, figure out what are your nice-haves, and test everything beyond that. Okay, moment 5, the confirmation. As I previewed at the start, I think this is the most underused real estate in fundraising. So right now, oftentimes people, they get through, they donate, they get a nice little email saying, congratulations, you donated, thank you so much. Maybe they even get something in the mail saying, thank you so much. If you take a look at what political organizations are doing, and I understand political organizations, they can be riskier, they burn their list down, there's a lot wrong with their approaches. There's also a handful of things that I think nonprofits can learn from their approaches. Many times people donate to a political, and sometimes you'll have something that pops up immediately that says, thank you so much for your $50. Do you want to give another $25? And they get so much money from that. They can also say, okay, I'm going to send this person an email that says, thank you so much for giving. We really appreciate it. It has your tax form attached, all of that kind of fun stuff. And in there, it can say, do you actually want to turn your gift into a recurring donor or a recurring donation? And it can be that you just gave $100 and we say, thank you for the $100. Do you want to make your gift also $10 a month? So you're not getting rid of that $100, you're keeping that, but you're then taking some kind of formula to turn them into a recurring donor. So there's just so many ways that in that moment, in that time when you have convinced somebody to raise their hand, be a donor, be a part of your organization, that we're then just saying, okay, thank you so much, goodbye. But instead we should be saying, thank you so much. Let's actually lean in more. Any way that you can put another ask in front of somebody, I think is that much better. Are there any organizations here who right now, after somebody gives, asks for another donation immediately?
I used in the old days.
Yeah.
And you did direct mail. I would put a contribution envelope that thank you us.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
It works. And people gave again and again and again.
I tried to call one donor for she was older. Every time I send a thank you, she sent in a donation. If it's like a constant thing, I don't know, maybe she's dementia. I gotta call her and tell her, do you really want to do this? And she said yes.
Yeah.
This continually gave. I continually thank her. She continually had a thank you. The contribution should be already in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. And I think oftentimes we, especially in like the digital space, we say, okay, just because that worked in the offline space, we're moving to digital, we're doing things differently. And really there's so much that is coming from direct mail that feeds into our approach online, that something like that is something that everybody could integrate into their practice and into their strategy and have it be in the email. And you can thank everybody, you can have a great, pros at the top of all the wonderful things. It doesn't need to be in your face like your fundraising match email might be, but there's just a really easy way to put it in front of somebody without it feeling like it's an overcommitment. Does anybody else do it? I have also seen some organizations where they have somebody who converts into a monthly donor, into a one-time donor, say, thank you so much. They've already seen the monthly donor ask. They said no to that, right? They picked a one-time gift. They send out the confirmation email and say, hey, do you want to give quarterly? And so that's another great way of saying, okay, we already got your gift. You're bought into the organization. You didn't seem to love the monthly donation ask. That's fine. Maybe let's ask somebody to give quarterly. Or maybe we can say, hey, thank you so much for your $1,000 donation asks. Do you just want to make this annually? Don't have to worry about it moving forward. We're going to take care of it for you. You make this every year? Not a problem. So there are so many ways that we can take this confirmation from, hey, thank you, to, hey, thank you, let's deepen the relationship in really creative ways. Is anybody here doing any kind of, hey, thank you, do you want to give quarterly or annually? Okay, so many wonderful things to test that at the end of year. And like I said, 15% of donors, to your point a second ago, will actually take a second action. That is new money. So if you're thinking about year end, again, that AI string will increase your revenue by 30%. If you ask a second action in front of somebody, an increase of 15%, you've just found a ton of new money that goes towards your goal, which is perfect. Okay. So now everybody's going to become best friends with everybody at their table. We're going to do a fun little activity. But like I said, it's going to be fun. So you're going to pull out your phone again. You're going to go to your own donation page, the one that you pulled up earlier. And you're going to walk through each of these questions: arrival, amount, recurring, submit, confirmation. And you're going to work through them. What are things that you can go back to your desk, your home, your office, whatever it is, and implement tomorrow? Again, thinking about the fact that year end is around the corner. What are easy things that we've talked about today that we can begin to do? So if you're thinking about the arrival, does the page reflect why you came there as a donor? The amount, are the suggested amounts earned? Are they guessed? Are they the right ones? Are they from a donation string that's high to low, low to high? How should I change it? I want everybody to think through this as a group within your table. I will pop around if you have any questions. We're going to spend some time going through it, and you're going to leave here with the whole testing plan of how to optimize your donation flow.